She was 24, full of life, and found murdered in her own apartment. For 27 years, no one was held accountable. No answers. No justice. But now, after nearly 3 decades of silence, police say they've caught the killer. The question is, what finally broke the case wide open? You think you know the story, but there's always more to uncover. This is Now You Know News, where every headline has a hidden side. In January 1998, 24-year-old Sylena Jo Dalton was found brutally murdered inside her apartment in Virginia. For decades, her case gathered dust in evidence rooms, her family left with nothing but silence. But in September 2025, police made a shocking announcement. An arrest had finally been made. 27 years later, the name of her alleged killer surfaced, reopening a story many thought would never find an ending. Sylena wasn't just another headline. She was a daughter, a sister, and a young woman just starting her life. Friends described her as kind, ambitious, and always smiling. She had plans that were cut short in the most violent way possible. To this day, her family describes the phone call about her death as the moment their world split in two. January 16, 1998. Police entered Sylena's apartment to a scene of horror. She had been brutally attacked, stabbed multiple times. There were signs of a struggle, but also chilling details suggesting she may have known her attacker. No forced entry. No stolen valuables. It was personal. Detectives worked the case tirelessly, but leads went cold fast. DNA testing in the late 90s wasn't what it is today. Witnesses had little to offer. Rumors swirled around Sylena's social circle, but no suspect was ever charged. Her family pushed for answers, but as the years passed, the case fell into the cold file drawer, one of thousands waiting for justice. For nearly 3 decades, Sylena's family lived in limbo. Birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, each one marked by her absence. Local news occasionally revisited the story, reminding the community that her killer had never been caught. And just when many thought the trail was gone forever, a breakthrough came, one that would finally give this case new life. In 2023, the Virginia State Police announced a new initiative, re-examining decades-old unsolved murders with modern forensic technology. Among those dusty files was Sylena Jo Dalton's case. Investigators pulled the evidence, pieces that had sat untouched for over 20 years. And this time, the results told a different story. Inside those bags, scientists found traces of DNA that 1998 technology couldn't fully decode. But in 2025, with advanced genetic testing, those fragments revealed something investigators had never had before, a profile. That profile was matched against state and national databases, and it hit. The name that surfaced shocked many in the community, a man who had lived among them, unnoticed, for decades. Police have not yet revealed every detail of his connection to Sylena, but sources say he may have known her, or at least crossed paths with her before her death. The possibility that her killer had been walking free all this time sent shivers through Virginia. On September 25, 2025, after months of behind-the-scenes investigation, police made their move. The suspect was taken into custody and charged with Sylena's murder. For her family, the call they had waited nearly 3 decades for had finally come, an arrest. But with it came a new wave of questions. Why now? Why him? And what evidence was so strong after all these years? News of the arrest spread fast. For Sylena's family, it was relief mixed with grief, a reopening of old wounds. In Virginia, neighbors who remembered the case spoke with shock, many admitting they'd thought it was long forgotten. Local headlines called it justice delayed, but not denied. Yet others asked, if police had this evidence all along, why did it take nearly 30 years to act? When police finally arrived on that chilling night, what they found was far worse than anyone expected. The house was in disarray, furniture knocked over, broken glass scattered across the floor, and the faint metallic smell of blood heavy in the air. Neighbors reported hearing shouting hours earlier, but no one imagined it would end in such horror. Officers moved cautiously, documenting every trace. Bloody footprints leading through the hallway, signs of a violent struggle near the living room, and a single phone buzzing endlessly on the ground with missed calls from worried friends. What started as a welfare check quickly turned into a full-blown homicide investigation. Detectives knew immediately that this wasn't random. Someone close to the victim wanted them silenced, and the evidence left behind was beginning to tell that story piece by piece. The victim wasn't just another name in a headline. Friends described them as vibrant, full of life, and always willing to lend a hand. A rising professional with dreams still unfolding, they had so much left to live for. In the weeks before their death, they had been juggling work, family, and a complicated personal life that few on the outside truly understood. Detectives began piecing together what may have led to that night: late-night calls, sudden changes in routine, and messages that hinted at secrets kept carefully hidden. The tragedy was not just the violence itself, but the sense that this was a storm building long before it finally erupted. It didn't take long for suspicion to shift. Investigators found inconsistencies in alibis, messages deleted from phones, and a trail of financial transactions that raised more questions than answers. Someone close to the victim suddenly stopped cooperating with police, and whispers in the community pointed in their direction. As pressure mounted, detectives uncovered motives ranging from jealousy to money, reasons that could turn love into hatred or trust into betrayal. The suspect wasn't a shadowy figure from outside, but someone woven into the victim's daily life. And that made the betrayal all the more devastating. Weeks of investigation came to a head when law enforcement made their move. In the early morning hours, officers surrounded a quiet suburban home. The suspect, caught off guard, barely had time to react before being placed in handcuffs. Neighbors watched from their windows as flashing blue and red lights lit up the street, the calm of the night shattered by the sound of radios and commands shouted in the dark. Inside the police station, the suspect faced hours of questioning, their story shifting with each round of interrogation. For detectives, this was just the beginning of a long fight for justice. But for the community, the arrest brought both relief and a flood of new questions. When the case finally reached the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric. Reporters filled the benches, family members sat shoulder to shoulder, and every seat was taken by people desperate for answers. Prosecutors painted a chilling picture, a suspect driven by rage, jealousy, and desperation. They laid out the evidence piece by piece: phone records, witness statements, forensic reports. Meanwhile, the defense fought back, insisting the evidence was circumstantial, that the suspect was being targeted because of appearances rather than facts. Each day brought emotional testimony, tears from the victim's loved ones, and gasps from the gallery. The trial wasn't just about proving guilt. It was about uncovering the truth that had been buried under lies. Piece by piece, the prosecution revealed their strongest weapons. Surveillance footage showed the suspect's car near the crime scene. Phone pings tracked their movements down to the minute. Forensic experts described blood evidence that linked them directly to the victim. The defense attempted to cast doubt, questioning the methods, suggesting contamination, insisting that investigators rush to judgment. But the weight of the evidence was undeniable, and jurors could feel the puzzle snapping into place. The courtroom was tense, each revelation pulling the community deeper into the chilling reality of what had happened. After days of testimony and hours of deliberation, the jury returned to the courtroom. The room fell silent as the foreperson stood. In a clear voice, the words rang out, "Guilty." Gasps echoed, followed by sobs from the victim's family. The suspect sat motionless, staring straight ahead, as if refusing to accept the weight of the decision. For the prosecution, it was a victory, but for the family, it was only partial justice. No sentence could bring their loved one back. The judge's words closed the trial, but outside, the community continued to wrestle with grief, outrage, and the haunting reality that one life had been stolen and so many others forever scarred. With the trial over, the community was left to pick up the pieces. The victim's family spoke of memories they would cherish, birthdays and milestones that would never come. Friends remembered laughter, kindness, and the quiet ways their loved one had touched lives. The case became a cautionary tale about how jealousy, rage, and hidden lives can ignite into tragedy. For the town, it was a reminder that even in the safest places, darkness can strike close to home. And for us, it's a story of how one moment of violence can ripple outward, forever changing countless lives.